Hello, you guys, and welcome to Naptown here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Speedway, Indiana. Threw a little Indiana slang at you at the start of the broadcast. That'll be all you get for today. I don't know any other Indiana phrases, I'm afraid, but we are at the world center of motor racing. Indianapolis, Indiana, one of the oldest tracks still continuously used since its inception at the beginning of the 20th century. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck. Ryan Mawson with us tonight behind the cameras. Tim Peck, we are at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but we are on the infield road course, redesigned in 2014. That's the variant we'll have today. Welcome in.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm sorry, I didn't actually quite catch where we are today. Where was it you said we were racing?
We're in Naptown.
Brilliant. So funny enough, never actually watched this track before in the broadcasting booth. I'm very excited to see it. I have driven it a couple of times, albeit not on a set of course competition though. So I'm very excited to see how it all turns out today. And well, as I'm sure you're about to catch us up on, Jesse, this particular championship so far has been rather exciting.
Yeah, it certainly has, and I thought maybe after our trip to Belgium it would be a little bit more clear, but it was anything but, of course, because Hugo Merrill's decided to win him a race and get back into the running of the championship. We'll obviously have the championship points for you at the conclusion of qualifying in about 15 minutes time, but it pretty much knotted it up at the top, and even behind them, I would say at this point, I'm curious what you think, anybody realistically still inside the top five have a legitimate shot to win this championship still?
Top five in the standings or top five currently in the practice? Because if we're talking about the practice, then there's a lot of big names here, Jess, that I'd say probably could still have a huge part in this championship. And maybe I'd argue that overall, to be fair. Of course, standings start to split out a little bit at this point in the season. You've got rather large gaps forming in places, but all it takes, Jess, is one race to go drastically differently, and it can change the entire standings. I know based on when I was talking in Thursdays, when I was commentating on Thursdays before, we had championships where there was people with 100-point leads that were just taken away over a matter of 1 to 2 races, and anything can happen. And with 2 races left in the finals, and most of these people here, you've got Boothby's already used up their drop round. I know that Salvalinen's used up theirs. Veld, I think, has used up their drop round as well. Anything could happen.
It really can. That was kind of the point that I was going to hammer home. George Boothby, of course, was away on assignment, had a different race he had to run about 3 weeks ago, so he missed the first race, so that was automatically going to be used as his drop round, and he has to be nigh on perfect through the final 4 races. Luckily for him, he won his first race back in round 2. He finished second 1 week ago. He has to continue that today. I will say this about Samir Foch. Samir Foch thought we were at Zandvoort today and is absolutely winging it. And if P4 in practice is winging it, I'd be scared to see what he would have done had he prepared.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, Jesse, is who's prepared for this and who isn't. Of course, the DLT is not so new now. It was new a couple of months ago. But it does come down to who's prepared for this race in general anyway. I know some drivers sort of show up on the day, they do the practice, and that's that. And, you know, that's what it comes down to, is who's prepared. But I think, realistically, looking back at last week, if some of them were more prepared, I'm looking at you, Boothby, Digby, whatever you want to call them, there might have been a better finish for them, because I know that Boothby came in slightly underprepared last week, and of course then looked very underprepared compared to what they usually are.
Well, folks, no need to adjust your brightness on the screen. This is exactly what you have. We do apologize for the incredibly frightening noise in the background, and it's just a little audio bug that happens from time to time. It's happened since day one. Still scares the absolute bejesus out of us, but rather, besides, we are in qualifying, and it is very dark, a stark contrast to where we were in the practice session. Drivers hopefully have their footing around this flat racing circuit now. because they're going to need it. Very few infield lights. I don't think you can actually, in reality, hold night races here due to noise ordinances. So we're gonna play the bad boy card today, Tim.
We certainly are, and a night race is interesting. I don't think we've had a night race yet in this particular championship, Jesse. But you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but a night race, interesting, of course, visibility a little lower, although you don't really, I don't know, do you need visibility for this track? There's not a lot of corners. Of course, there is more corners than it would if we did the oval layout, but visibility being lower, of course, car headlights in itself can be a problem. I know sometimes if I'm driving out on track, Jesse, if it's nighttime and someone's got their headlights and they're right behind me, personally, my eyes are just drawn to the rear view mirror. I know that's not a good thing to say. It's definitely not a good thing to have overall. You should absolutely always be focused on the road, no matter what. But if someone's shining their lights brightly right in my rear view mirror, it's taking my attention off the corners ahead, especially if I'm in a tight fight.
Well, I love what the legend race car driver Scott Pruitt used to say about being flashed or having lights behind him. He said, well, I always like seeing white lights come up behind me more than I had red ones in front of me. And more importantly, said that whenever he was flashed by another driver, it only gave him more motivation, of course, to stay in front of them. Think about that, folks, of you at home. Next time you are attempting to flash a driver in a race such as this, maybe all you're doing is further fortifying their position. I know it certainly changed my outlook on doing it, though, admittedly, I still like to do it from time to time.
Yeah, of course, different people adopt those strategies as well. I know I'm probably guilty of in the past flashing the person ahead of me, trying to distract them a little bit. But it's interesting what you say, Jesse, because I think it just depends on the person who's in front of you. There are some people who are a bit more motivated to continue if they get flashed, but at the same time, I do know some people who, if you're flashing behind them, it does distract them and it can make them more under pressure as well, likely to mess up. That corner, Jesse, that's turn one, isn't it? No, it's not. It's on the final turns. Never mind, I'm confused. But either way, that particular corner where you're going straight towards those barriers that have the right arrows on them, I consistently think the car's just going to keep going straight through them. It really trips me out.
Yeah, 15-turn race course or 16 turns, depending on how you look at it. Of course, one of the newest variants of this racetrack isn't the addition of the 2014 chicane that makes up turn 14 and 15. It's actually using the old school Indianapolis Grand Prix loop through turns 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. That used to be just a tiny little chicane. There are different series that still run that little chicane, but GT cars aren't one of them. They use this loop here that we're currently watching George Boothby go through. And as far as all of us are aware, Indianapolis, IMS, and nobody has updated the track maps to represent this specific layout. Our stewards have noted this, and they've had to completely make their own track guide and track map for their stewarding today. And, well, I think they've done a lovely job in MS Paint.
Is that what that is that they sent to the chat?
That is what they're doing, yeah.
Oh, okay, that explains the crosses and the new numbers sprawled everywhere. But either way, the stewards will be on point today with their live stewarding. That means that every time an incident happens, every time you see a penalty, well, nearly every time you see a penalty, but I'll get to that in a minute, it will be because the stewards have given it to the driver. Of course, there are some exceptions. The track cut warning, if you get 4 track cuts, then you end up with a, oh, I'm going to get this wrong, it's going to be embarrassing. There's a drive-through penalty for that. That you get from the game itself, so those aren't from the stewards, but the game will still give them out. And a stop and go, 30 seconds for speeding in the pit lane, although I hear from you last week, Jesse, and I still don't believe this to be true, but you can get a stop and go of a different time length depending on how fast you speed into the pit lane here.
Yeah, I've seen it happen at Imola, or at least I'm pretty sure I saw it happen. Somebody got a stop and go 10 for minor speeding. And I think, incorrectly mention that somebody got a drive-through for minor speeding. I think that might have been pre 1.8 where that would have occurred, but post 1.8 where they readjusted all those things, I am fairly confident. I'm going to say 60, we'll call it 69%. That's a nice number, that I've seen a stop and go 10 and a stop and go 30 based on the severity of speeding. I'm happy to be proven wrong, though, in that respect. You definitely get a stop and go 30 if you speed quite heavily, but I don't know why I would think I've seen a stop go 10 when I haven't, but it is definitely possible. 7:06 a.m. It's not nighttime. It is dawn here at Indianapolis. 13 degrees C. The track tip. The track is only fast. It is not completely rubbered in yet. The final few minutes of qualifying left to go. Boothby a 34.387. Hugo Merrill's nearly half a second off of that time. It was 4/10, but now Tico Vandervelde has gone to the top of the board, a 34.210, good enough for provisional pole, and that will drop Boothby back about 2/10, a little bit less. Hugo now 6/10 off of that overall pace. Juno Savolainen a little bit behind them, and Samir Foch rounds out the top 5. Foch the better part of 8/10 off. Nobody in the ballpark at Tico Vandervelde right now.
Vandervelde just showing up, putting Boothby down in second place. And that's the thing with Vandervelde. Can either perform really well or just sort of dip into that 4th or 5th slot in these races across the championship. But having provisional pole, it's a great place to start. I mean, being in that first place position, we've talked about it numerous times as to whether you need to be in first place to end in first place. But at the end of the day, Jesse, the higher you start, the better your race is looking. Of course, the second place itself is no slouch either. Boothby going back to the second race of this season when we were in Japan at Suzuka. And all I remember is Boothby there slingshotting himself past Hugo Morales before the first corner had even approached. And so Boothby, not a slouch starting in second place, although last week, correct me if I'm wrong, did they start down in 3rd, maybe even 4th at Belgium when we were at the Spa track? And yeah, I'm just wondering, Boothby here today starting in 2nd, maybe that's where you want to be. I know that Boothby is definitely not one to worry whether they're starting in 1st or 2nd, because you're still on that front row, and as I said, you can't just slingshot yourself around that first corner.
You're not going to get any argument from me. I've seen it time and time again for the very first race we ever had here at Indianapolis Road Course in ACC. I've seen it in professional esports settings as well. The front couple of rows. As a matter of fact, the big SRO race, I did some commentary on. Both 2nd and 4th gained a spot on the initial start by hanging it around the outside. It is incredibly viable, of course, with the second turn, of course, being a left-hander. If you can hang there, the tight left-hander, turn number 2, can give you a better shot, or even just beating them down into 1, which I've seen George Boothby do here in the past. Boothby 17/100ths off of the pole position. He might take your advice here, Tim, and shut it down and take second place. Samir Foch up to P3, 2/10, a little bit more than that actually, about 3/10 off of the pole pace. Garrett Fisher now P4, 4/10 off in the 78. The top 3 spots all occupied by Ferrari, and as if on cue, Hugo Merrill's bumps into P4, making it a Ferrari lockout of the front 2 rows. Excellent job there. Fisher the best of the rest, and Jardier in 6th place, 6/10 off of the group. Savolainen, Morgan McCall, Lawrence Dimitrov, the rest of your top 10. Time has expired here, of course. All flying laps will count. Will anybody improve? Will Boothby improve? Yes, he will. A 33.960, the first 33 of the day, and a quarter-second clear of Tinko now.
That is true, but Vandervelde does still have a time to set as they are currently going around the track. Porsche has put in their time. That will be 5/10 off Boothby, so they'll remain in 3rd for now. But Hugo Morales would have crossed the line with enough time. They've just returned to the pits, though, Jessin. I was going to say, usually you look at the front 4 being the Ferraris and you think, wow, Ferrari at Indianapolis, that must be the car to pick. But I'd argue slightly differently here in that those 4 drivers, I almost expect to see them at the top today.
Well, a couple of them I know are sort of working together. I know Boothby and Foch have been in communications recently, and they're both obviously driving the Ferrari. They're driving that car elsewhere as well. And Boothby, obviously, he is streaming right now. I checked his stream title earlier, and he's contemplating making the Ferrari his main car. I don't think it matters what car George is in. I think he's going to be fast regardless. Jardier comes across the line to complete qualifying. No improvement. And that is that. George Boothby on pole here. Keep in mind, in RCI, that is additional points. Speaking of the points, let's take a look at the points championship through 3 of 5 rounds. First standings look a little bit like this. We alluded to how close it was, and yes, it is. George Boothby leads them all with 129. Hugo Merrill's after that impressive win 1 week ago takes himself all the way into P2, 126, just a few points out of the championship lead. Jade Hutchinson, who started this championship off with a win of their own, 118. And in 4th place, Jaroslav Hanzik, 106, rounding out the top 5. Valentin Berrier on 96 points. It is a slight uphill climb for them, you'd have to say, but not impossible. Martin Lawrence in 6th place, 81 points. 1 point behind them, Samir Foch, who's had an up and down season, but looking good tonight. Simone Simonara with 71 points in the 8th place position. Garrett Fisher, 69 points in 9th place. Tico Vandervelde, the man who nearly took the pole here tonight, in 10th place with 64.
Now, looking at the next 10 in the championship, Marco Ripper in 11th place with 62 points. Tied currently with Romain Thomas. They are in 11th as well. They have 62 points too. Dimitrov is in 13th, followed by Billen in 14th, just 3 points behind. But just 1 point behind Billen is Jason Dyer in the Audi. Also, just 1 point behind is Cereso. They're currently in 16th. They're driving the Aston Martin V8 car, and that rounds out all the people who are in the top, who have at least 40 points. Looking down there, John Daly, 17th place right now, 38 points. 2 points behind them is Sam Smeet. 2 points behind them is Alessio Meris. And then looking down at 20th, rounding out that top 20 is Christian Bock.
Outside the top 20, Nicholas Tardoli with 31 points, tied with Jonas Savalainen. Behind them, Pierre-Alexander Session, 28 points. That's a driver in the 977 that I expected to be at least in the top 15, has had pretty poor luck in recent weeks. Morgan McCall, same could be said for the South African, 25 points. Nicholas Bosselet, 22 points. Matthew Schroeder on 20 points. Korn Bosch with 19 points. I completely butchered that name. I do apologize. Dan Edvardsen, 18 points. Justice with 15. And Brian Scheckerman rounds out your top 30 with 14 points.
Ashley Richardson has 10 points. They're currently in 31st place. Max Payne in 32nd has 5 points. Martin Lindrup in 33rd has 3 points. Michael Herman Frey and Umut Bozok both have 0 points, but they are still in the championship. Everyone else with a little hyphen in the place where the points would be is currently not in the championship.
Well, it's an interesting field, and the points are very tight. I think today we are finally going to get a clearer picture of what this championship's going to look like. Of course, this is the penultimate round in the series, but do bear in mind, everyone at home, there is a drop round. How does the drop round work? Simple. Your worst finish is erased. All other finishes will count. No driver has won more than one race thus far, so that's the question I pose to you, Tim Peck. Will we get our first repeat winner today?
I think it's likely, because here's the thing. If you look at the top 4, Jesse, they are 4 very hard fighters. I believe 3 of the race winners from this championship are in that top 4, but I've got to be honest, I'm slightly biased here. I gave this race to Boothby.
Going to give it to Boothby, and that would mean we will have a repeat winner. But keep in mind, they're on the pole position. Will they be at a disadvantage? We talked a little about that, and folks, I think you're going to see what we're talking about. The outside lane is so powerful here. It's not just here. There's several different racetracks where being on the outside pole position is a little better option. This is definitely one of those cases today. Just catching up on some things from chat. We do read chat as always here at RCI, and someone questioning earlier, were we sort of making an excuse for George Boothby missing round one? I don't think so. I could have sworn he was doing an event elsewhere, but it also is possible he was setting up his incredibly nice sim rig, but that is a possibility. But in my head, I did remember him doing an event. I think it might have been a team event with somebody else, though my mind is hazy. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. It is very possible. I could be wrong. We were talking about flashing the lights. What does that do to you with the low light level here today? You're likely going to see a lot of drivers on the button, and a difference of opinion. Some agree that it does make them a bit more determined. Some of you seem to believe that the other drivers lose credibility in your mind if they do that, and yet others of you, it does make you nervous. So quite interesting. I do like that spread that we have there. Of course, everybody already, Tim Peck, sharing who they think is going to win the race and rooting for their drivers. George Boothby, your pick to win today, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think there's a slight bias there. Of course, those of you who have watched the other race in this champ know that George Boothby is a favourite driver of mine, but I don't know, there's something today, Jesse, that says to me that George Boothby is going to be coming in and biting back. Of course, they won race 2, they weren't in race 1, but I'd be interested to have seen where they positioned at Bathurst if they were in it. But they won race 2, they didn't win last time round in race 3, and I've got to say, something is telling me, Jesse, that this is Boothby's redemption race after what happened at Spa. I just feel like a bit of a collision at the beginning and then struggling to even match the pace of the front runners. To me, Boothby could have done more last week. But that being said, I have to remember as well that actually what I said isn't strictly speaking true, Jesse. The winner of race 1 was Malinowski. They're not performing in this race because they have signed out the championship.
Well, Malinowski did win race number 1. Remember, he crashed coming over Skyline.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Jade Hutchinson won in the Honda.
They did, and I completely forget about that, but Hutchinson did win in the Honda. Are they still in the championship, or have they signed out?
No, Jade Hutchinson is here, as far as I'm aware, in this championship. Now, I did not see that Honda in qualifying. It certainly didn't look like it featured inside the top 10. But they
I don't remember seeing them in quali at all, to be fair.
That is a good point. They might not be in the field today, but a healthy field we do have working the final couple of turns, getting ready to go. There is a Honda in the field that we can see in the top 23, but that Honda belongs to Wouter Billen in the 183. What can Vandervelde do on this start to get by George Boothby? I would have to think Tinko's in the better spot to get a run. Samir Foch may make this interesting going 3 wide. Hugo Merrils, who won a week ago, might be in a good spot as well to take over at least 3rd spot, maybe even 2nd. Will we see a push from the mid-pack? And a very special welcome in to all of our stewards, and we hope and keep our fingers crossed that this tight right and left-hander to start this lap is a clean one. Ladies and gentlemen, the penultimate round here in the Friday Sprint Championship is green, and they already fan out 3 wide, weaving down the straight as one of the Mercedes goes from the inside to the outside. One Mercedes down the inside and side by side for the lead. Vandervelde and Boothby going side by side. Vandervelde's going to go off. He's going to have to get back on the track. That's going to allow Foch to get a bye into 2nd place. Hugo Merrils holds on to 4th, but only just right behind him. Garrett Fisher looking. That's not Garrett Fisher. I've just realized that's Jardier trying to get by the 4th place driver. A land rush here as they cycle through into the right-hander as Savalainen finds space around the outside, and only one car, Wouter Billen, seems to be backwards off of 3.
I mean, it looked like Van der Velde had it for a second there, but just going wide meant that they had to tuck back into that second place position. Or are they in third now? They're in third now by the looks of that leaderboard, as it looks like Billon hasn't been updated yet because they've not crossed the Sector 1 mark. Something must have happened to Billon in the Honda there, but Boothby still in the lead after turn 1, has a 9/10 gap to Foch behind, Van der Velde in third, and Hugo Morel still in fourth. So we still have 4 Ferraris in that top 4, Jesse, but not in the same order they went into this race.
Well, spirited start to the race. There has been a huge calamity in what would have been turn 10. I'm pretty sure several cars have gone off, a fairly large incident. And look at this, Van der Velde, who is up to P2, is being hounded by Samir Foch. But Foch giving up that spot as Van der Velde goes back through for the Williams Esports team. George Boothby already enjoys a 2.5-second lead. Look at this. They're fighting for second place, and they're fighting for it 3 wide nearly. Going down to the 1, a little bit of contact there between a couple of the Ferraris. It's 3 Ferraris and a McLaren all fighting over P2. Van der Velde's going to be able to just get through. Foch settles into third. Merrill's in fourth place, and Jardier took a good look around the outside, but had to fall back in line as it is a 4-car breakaway for P2.
A big fight for P2, and for P3 currently the fight continues. Martin Lawrence trying to find their footing, hoping to slot back into that 10th place. Will continue to hold 10th from Mellis there, who was putting pressure on them in the 15 Ferrari. But Martin Lawrence continues on the track in 10th place. And, well, Jesse, that is your top 10 after 1 lap. And I've got to say, I'm not surprised. That is a very strong-looking top 10.
It is, and you shouldn't be surprised that George Boothby's out in front. It was a spirited fight from Van der Velde, but ran out of room there and very nearly, and actually did lose P2 to Foch, but somehow able to get back around. I'd be interested to see if Foch just maybe missed an entry point to a corner or something like that to give him space to go up the inside like he did. That was a very strange place to make a pass to begin with. You'd have to imagine Samir made a little bit of a mistake, or you don't really have to make a mistake. You just go a little bit wide on some of these tight corners. A little bit of contact here. Christian Bach nearly forcing the BMW of Richardson off the racetrack, and they'll get back on, but not before they lose a couple of spots there. 2 drivers trying to fight their way inside the top 20. Morgan McCall trying to make this work around the outside of Juna Savalainen, and I think he's going to do it here.
Yeah, that's a great move there from McCall on the outside for T1. And as you said, that is where you almost want to be. You can just go round the outside, and as long as you're neck and neck by the time you get around to turn 2, you can just push that person back out of the track, and then you've got the much better run around turn 3. And I've got to say, that was absolutely amazing from McCall there. Looking into chat quickly, saw that Glimrel asked, is it Jesse? Not sure of the spelling. It is not spelled like that. Jesse, you are going to kill me for saying this, I know, but Jesse Lee is spelled Jesse-E, and the way to remember it is that 50% of his name is Ease.
Well, we're taking applications for my co-commentator here on Friday. If you think you have what it takes, you can file your you can file your resume with me here at RCI. You'll know me because my name is half vowels apparently. Jardier again trying to go around the outside, trying to get a spot here from Hugo Merrill's. Can't quite do it and loses quite a bit of time. Not a turn you really want to be going around the outside of. Jardier learns that the hard way, but again, he'll put that in his memory bank for later. And if the situation comes up, maybe try to duck down the inside rather than go the long way. Martin Lawrence for Connection Lost Racing inside the top 10. The Audi driving very well. The second Audi we have, in fact, inside the top 10. Valentin Berrier, P7, just up in front of this group. Also in the top 10, Alessio Mellis here in 11th place, might be under fire from Edvardsen. And Edvardsen might be thinking about making a pass around the outside himself. But I don't think he's going to get it done. George Boothby, 3.2 seconds clear of the field. It was 2.8 a lap ago. Absolutely setting sail here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that is the corner to do it on. Of course, you've got the first corner, which is the better part to try and go around the outside, but that turn 3-4 section however many corners you want to call it, Jesse, I'd say is going to be a struggle to get round the outside of, just because it's quite long. It's one of those corners that keeps getting apologies for my voice chip there, but it's one of those corners that seems to keep going, and I think for Mellis to try and have the move done on the outside there of Lawrence, I don't know. To me, that is not the place to go around the outside.
No, it certainly isn't. There's a couple of places where you can get that done. You can do that into turn 1. There is a hesitancy to defend the inside into turn 1 simply because you can get a run around the outside. But turn 13, where we saw Jardier try, it's not one of those that you can really pull it off. Turn 4, where we just saw that a moment ago, also Edvardsen there in turn 4 is not a place where you can get that worked out either. We mentioned our stewards had to create their own track map for today's race. We're not kidding about that. They basically took the old track map of the previous circuit with the chicane, turns 5 and 6. They took that version and they renamed all the corners. They didn't rename them, they renumbered all the corners, and they did that what appears to be in Microsoft Paint, and they just crossed out a bunch of the turn numbers and put their own in there. Now that's important to the stewards, folks, because they have to know when looking at, sorting out, and posting penalties, what turn, what lap, and what time an incident occurred. So that has to be accurate, that track map, for them to do their job. And as funny as it is for me to sit here and look at a track map that looks like it was drawn by somebody aged 5, it's a necessary step they had to take today, because no track map of this version of this race circuit apparently exists yet.
Completely unrelated to the race, Jesse. Does Microsoft Paint still exist? I could have sworn it was removed ages ago, though, right?
What are you asking? I'm sorry. The stewards are berating me for. I'm sorry. The stewards are berating me because I said privately before we went live tonight that we've never had a horrific race around this place. It doesn't usually lend itself to bad races, and the steward's very busy, obviously. What was your question, Tim?
I mean, it's fine, because mine was actually completely unrelated to the race, but I just asked, does Microsoft Paint still exist? I could have sworn Microsoft Paint went
I'm pretty
away.
sure it's just called Paint now. Yeah,
Are
I don't
you
think it's called
sure?
MS Paint. I mean, do you want me to check? I mean, I can check real quick.
No, I'll take your word for it. I'm absolutely
Yeah,
Googling it.
Paint's an app. Paint's an app that is still available, Windows 10 and Windows 11. Yeah.
Is it? Okay, fine.
Yeah,
I could have
it's not
sworn
called-
they
it's
made a
not called
big deal about
MS
removing
Paint.
it, though.
Well, no, they did, because it's not the same as it used to be, but it
Right.
still is there. Yeah, I have it on my computer at least. But yeah, I back in my day though, kids, it was definitely called MS Paint, but it is not called that anymore. You're being ousted in chat as a GIMP
I
enjoyer,
am.
just so you know. And oh boy, I can't even disagree with you. The amount of hours I spent putting details on race cars myself.
Okay, now I'm going to sound very outdated and not down with the kids. What's GIMP?
Say back in my
Jesse?
day.
Back in my day, what's GIMP though?
GIMP is, contrary to what it sounds like, GIMP is a freeware paint program that mimics a lot of the features of, you know, the more expensive ones. I was gonna say a name brand there. Decided not to at the last second, but you get the point. GIMP is a freeware paint utility. It has a lot of the same stuff as a lot of the other paint programs, Photoshop, etc. And which was strange to me. Yeah, because I was a Corel user years and years ago, which meant that I knew nothing about Photoshop. And when I started using GIMP, I had to completely relearn what all the buttons did, because Corel and PaintShop are two very different things. Wow, we haven't talked about this race in 5 minutes. George Boothby out in front, gained another 3/10 on that lap. Tinko Vandervelde driving away from Samir Foch, 2.2 seconds between second and third. Hugo Merrells has not fallen off the back of Foch. It still is, though, a 4 Ferrari breakaway up front. Jardier not off the back of that group for the top 5. Garrett Fisher, the best of the rest in P6, but fast approaching behind him is this man, Valentin Berrier, the Berrier Racing Team 72 Audi, who is catching the 6th place driver.
And Barrier is one of those drivers who I just love watching because they always seem to be in that top 10, Jesse, usually even in the top 5 as well. And they're constantly racing someone. So Barrier, I'm looking at to put up a good fight with Fisher once they finally close that gap. It's about 7 tenths at the moment, but you're more realistically, was that car off the track there? I could have sworn I just saw a car off the track there, and there is someone going slowly, but I'll have a look at that later. But Barrier is one of those people, Jesse, that constantly a good one to watch because always putting pressure on the driver ahead. And I think car number 71 may have been the car that I saw off the track, but I may also be wrong in that. But am I going crazy, Jesse, is basically what I'm asking.
By the way, there was a car that did go off the track, a white and blue car. I'm unsure. You're not losing your marbles today. I'm unsure what car that was, but it appeared to be a Ferrari, white and blue, mostly white with blue flashes down the side. It might have been Simonara, in fact, in the 12, unconfirmed, but definitely a car off in the grass. I don't know exactly what happened there. I can tell you, and just to reaffirm, Stewart's very busy with a lot of incidents, 6 or 7 in the first lap, and apparently not much better the lap after that. This will certainly be the busiest race we've had here, and very spirited fights going on up and down the entire field. Hard to get away from people here. You got the long back straight and the long pit straight as well. Even if your car isn't quite as good in the twisty bits, it can still usually keep up on the straight, of course, depending on what car you are in. I love what our broadcaster Ryan Mawson, he's appearing as RCI TV, obviously in the chat. He did the BBC thing. RCI would like to say many other paint programs are available in the interest of fairness and neutrality. I do love that. That's not lost on me as an American. I get that that's what the BBC does. I think that's very funny. We are not the BBC, however, and you know, the world's better with different paint programs in it. What are we on about? Oh, that's right. We are a racing broadcast. 46 and a half so minutes left to go. A pit stop is owed by every driver in the field as of yet. 25-second mandatory time stationary in the pit lane. And what you do with that time is rather up to you. 5 extra seconds on top of that nets you a set of tires. Unlike some races we've had this season, there will be teams that go for it today. We've seen that go both ways, where the majority of drivers have taken tires, and we've also seen it where the majority have not taken tires. Today, though, I think you're going to see a good mix of the two strategies.
I'll be interested to see how that turns out as well, because obviously if you don't opt into taking that fresh set of tires, Jesse, you save yourself a good 5 seconds, is it, in the pit lane, where that's amazing track position. I mean, for a lot of these drivers, the ones that are fighting, you can see in the mid-pack, Dimitrov, if they save that, not Dimitrov, sorry, Sheckerman above Dimitrov, if they save that 5 seconds, they could put themselves all the way up into 15th, and then it's just a case of making sure their tyres are in good enough condition for them to hold out. I'm looking right now, Jesse, at the top of the leaderboard. Is this a glitch, or is it currently that Boothby and Van der Velde both have the fastest lap?
Yes, indeed, that is the case, folks. On the left side of your screen, the scoring tower has 2 magenta numbers. That can only mean one thing. George Boothby, who had the fastest lap of the race, has been tied by Tico van der Velde. And unlike in qualifying, where the tie goes to the car that ran the lap first, that's not how it works in the race. A dead tie is a dead tie. And also, if there were points on display for that, we would, do we give points for the fastest lap? We do, don't we? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. And in that case, both those drivers would get the points for running the fastest lap. Now, there's a long way to go, and somebody might try to Charles Leclerc out there. That might be a bit of a sore spot for some folks viewing at home, but they might try that strategy at some point. Well, that's okay, because I love him.
Oh, Only the professional commentators here at RCI on a Friday. I mean, this has been a very chaotic stream so far. And
what's going on here today? We've all taken some weird medicine, I think, is what's going on here.
Honestly, I think we spent about 5 minutes talking about the race and 10 minutes talking about every other brand under the sun.
There is a race going on.
There is a race, and as I was saying earlier, Barrier has caught up to Fisher. Now, this is the sweet spot that you want to be in, about 3 tenths away from the opponent in front. That's when the slipstream starts to get a little bit more noticeable, and that is when you can start to set up an attacking move on the car ahead. Unfortunately, Barrier not quite close enough to Fisher to go for a move as of yet, but you can see they are closing in, and the gap has got a lot smaller. So keep your eye on this battle, folks, because I have no doubt that it's about to get pretty close between these two drivers.
Well, there's a couple of drivers in every race that you can assume are going to be very entertaining to watch. Samir Foch, of course, one of those, never a driver to give up, never a driver to give you anything. It's going to make you fight for it. You could say that about Valentin Berrier as well. Very entertaining driver to watch. And fortunately for us, Foch is currently defending from Hugo Merrill's, and now Valentin Berrier is attacking Garrett Fisher for 6th place. Spoiled for choice here, Savalainen, who has had a interesting season, a season that they're hoping to get a little bit better finishes out of before it's all said and done, working inside the top 10. And of course this back here for what would eventually be P14, that pink and blue car in front. That's the 197 BMW Jordan Daly. Right behind him in the Lamborghini is Max Payne. You've got Simonara in the fight as well. And now it's going to settle down between Daly and Payne as they fight over the 14th place spot.
Oh, they got ever so close. I was just watching how that corner turned out, because we've seen a couple of interesting strategies approaching that corner near another driver, Jesse, and I've got to say, I don't think any of them have really worked out today. I think 3 different methods I've seen. One was towards the inside, one was towards the outside, and then one was just, I think I saw someone go from the outside towards the in, almost trying to do a switch back on the driver's head, but that corner just doesn't seem to be the one to get the overtake off on. And hey, if it is, then maybe I'm just waiting to see it done a little bit better. But in terms of where the overtakes are happening today, Jesse, I've pretty much only seen it on that start-finish straight into turn 1 and 2. Of course, actually where we're watching now, where Salford Island is just following through McCall ahead, both in Mercedes. Another opportunity sort of arises there, but in terms of actual points where you can be set that are not overtakers are going to happen, I've not seen a lot of opportunities across the whole track.
No, there's a couple of spots where you can get a pass done, but most of the time you're biding your time, you're waiting and just hoping to stay close. Talking about drivers that will not give you anything, how about the South African Morgan McCall, the ATK Pro Series car in P8 for the time being. Savalainen is not a driver that is going to sit there and allow you to stop their progress either. This is the unstoppable force versus the immovable object a little bit here for 8th place. This could get incredibly spicy between these two. I always love seeing that coming off of that turn, how the different cars track off of the 15th turn. Some look like they're, what we would say in America, dirt tracking it. They're almost sideways, yawed out, as you would say. Getting off of that corner, it's all, of course, because of the banking. But it looks really awkward, but also looks like a lot of fun. And is when you hit that turn just right. Here is the Ferrari Enjoyers 88, piloted by Samir Foch. He holds a very, very small lead over Hugo Merrill's, and Jardier has closed back in the gap. Speaking of Samir, I caught up with Samir a little bit earlier in the day. Had a very interesting question. We've had quite a lot of debate on how you pronounce or say his name around here at RCI. You and chat, you lot have also been involved in those conversations. We've had a bunch of speculation, and I've had a lot of questions asked to me of why I pronounce it Foch, when it could very easily, if it was German, it could be Foch, obviously. It could be whatever the heck Tim Peck said it was the other week. Yeah, that's the one. There's a lot of different things. I said that I always pronounced it like the French word because that was the only language I know how to pronounce it in at the time. Turns out, by complete accident, I was 100% correct. I asked Samir how he would pronounce his last name. He said it was Foch, and I've never been more validated in my life, albeit by accident.
I'm a little bit upset, honestly, because of what you told me it was earlier. Now I've just realised that you're actually joking and winding me up. But I full-on believed you when you told me that it was pronounced Fauché, and now I'm slightly upset that it's not. But to have a closure on that, I mean, it almost feels weird now because we're all going to be calling him Foch. There's no
I mean, I've been calling him Foch for like 4 years. I just assumed it was Foch.
But there was something nice, wasn't there, about everyone having a slightly different pronunciation of it. And then my personal favourite was whenever we had someone new join us in the commentary booth, and they'd come out with an even weirder way of pronouncing it, like that we've never heard of before. And I don't know, something about it just felt almost quite traditional to me, I guess, which was like, pick the way you're going to pronounce this name, but to have a roundup on it, of course. I've already forgotten what it is. Foch. You're not agreeing with me here, Jesse. Have I got it wrong again? But yeah,
I'm not going to correct you again. But what I was concerned about was obviously Samir is Latvian, all right. And I asked him. The actual question I asked him is, Lindrup here defending, but might be overtaken, and in fact, actually no, the other way around. Lindrup is able to get around Marco Ripper for that position, but no, because Samir is Latvian, I asked him, the actual question was, in your home language, how do you say it? And he goes, well, you don't, because it's not Latvian. And then it was like, okay, well, how do you pronounce it then? I mean, he's like, Foch. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I accidentally got that right. Several cars are ducking down the pit lane. We saw that a lap or so ago. Morgan McCall had pitted out of the 8th place position. Now Vanko Dimitrov, the Mad Panda Motorsport liveried car, pitting out of P20. That'll drop them right to the back of the grid. We talked about the massive field here. You can see sort of the back end of it now. 28 cars. There might have been a few more than that on the initial start, but still a huge grid late into the season, and we're not used to that a lot of the time. Normally by this point you have about 25 cars in a season left, but no, way more than that here.
I ask you this every single week, Jesse, and I'm going to ask you again. In terms of tactical pit stops here, first thing I want to know is, are you taking the fresh set of tyres, or are you leaving the tyres off, taking the extra 5 seconds that you gain, or and when are you pitting? There's a lot of different strategies that go around. 90% of the time people are pitting on that 30-minute mark as close to the dot as possible, and I know that's exactly what you're going to say, but there are some that I've seen in the past take strategies where they pit slightly earlier, even slightly later, just get that little bit of fuel advantage as well.
Yeah, depends on who you're asking. If you're asking me, the race driver, it's I want tires every single time I come into pit lane. Otherwise, why am I coming down pit lane? But as an engineer, I'm like, you don't need tires. That's 5 seconds. That's free time. You don't need tires. Go out there and drive the car. But I think most people will take the tires, if not for anything else but defense, and I think most of the teams will come in around the halfway point. I think a couple of the early pitters, I like Morgan McCall's answer there was to come in just a bit earlier, get him out of that battle that he was stuck in, and also too, that'll be what will end up being a quite long undercut, but a very nice one at that, and I think that will work out really well, especially if that car has come out in clean air, and I suspect it might have done a little bit ago. I think for the majority, you're going to see them come in at the halfway point, including our leaders. It's going to be a mad rush to the pit lane, though, here in another 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a safe bet. Of course, the leaders just sort of tend to pit at the same time. Obviously, if Boothby comes in first, then Van der Velde will follow. If Van der Velde comes in, then I highly expect Boothby will just follow the next lap, because it's easy then, isn't it? There's no risk of an overcut or an undercut. You're all pitted at more or less the same time, and for Boothby in particular to be on almost the exact same strategy as Van der Velde here just means that they don't have to worry. They know that in outright pace, they're that little bit faster. Of course, they both have fastest lap with the exact same time, Jesse, but over an average set of laps, Boothby has been slightly faster. Seminara here has gone for a move around the outside of John Daly. John Daly still slightly ahead going into the corner, but Seminara now has the inside onto the start-finish straight. This gives John Daly an opportunity to try and get back as they approach this first corner. And Jesse Lee, look how close those two cars are.
Yeah, certainly is the case. Daly missed turn 13 quite badly, in fact, ran onto the grass, and that invited Seminara to make a run at it, make a go of it. Simon Seminara has done exactly that and has got through and has already driven away a little bit. Looks to be ailing as Jordan Daly has a huge waggle there by Max Payne as they're going to now get through into turn 3. As, well, it looked like Daly was struggling with grip or something in the BMW right now. Max Payne, the Lamborghini Squadra Corsa livery car, having a little couple of twitches there. Not the most happy of cars going around the race course, but still able to make the pass. Daly back to P15. Seminara and Payne up a spot, both of them. Reading chat here is interesting, talking about how different people pronounce different names. Jardier talking to Boothby or pronouncing his name. I can hear the Jardier in what you've written out. I'm gonna do a Jardier impression as Valentin Berrier pits out of P7. I'm gonna do a Jardier impression. You ready? Boothby. Boothby. That's really horrible, but you get the point.
I can hear that. I think that was pretty on point, Jesse.
Do you think? Well, I appreciate that. I can't do a Jimmy Broadbent thing. I don't know who Jimmy Broadbent is. I know who Borg Wankelborg is. I know who that is.
Got me there. I'll go.
Jimmy Shedden? Yeah, Jimmy Shedden. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Shedden. Big fan of that. Pit stops are commencing a little bit early for some of the drivers. We expected as much. Valentin Berrier, Jordan Daly is in. We just saw Brian Scheckerman come in as well. Some penalties have been coming through as the action has been quite heavy thus far. Couple of the penalties that we have seen, or the lack thereof penalties in some of these cases. Racing incident between the 12 and the 77. 5-second penalty for car 77 for avoidable contact between the 171, the 966, and the 197. An additional 5-second penalty for car 77 for failing to hold brakes after that accident. No further action between the 183, the 22, and the 42. No further action between the 12 and the 180. Drive-through penalty for car 488 for releasing brakes causing significant contact, taking out the 777. Position not returned. Drive-through for car 488. That's a second drive-through for car 488. For turning in too sharp, causing contact, taking out car 77. Position not returned. It's noted that car 77 rejoin was done as safe as possible. Additional notes, car 488 retired from the session, and that's just as well because disqualification for car 488 for exceeding maximum license points limit for a single race. They're not disqualified from the championship, just the race today. They'll take no further part, but it's just as well they had already retired that car. No further action between the 44 and the 77. Racing incident between the 44, the 42, and the 114. Racing incident between the 13 and the 39. Racing incident between the 72 and the 100. 5-second penalty for car 114 for forcing another car off track. That was the 71 back on lap 2. Racing incident between the 42 and the 71. Racing incident between the 39 and the 13. And you are all caught up, as we are all caught up thus far. A lot of racing incidents. Only the one big penalty there, the disqualification very early on into this race, Tim.
And as you've just finished up, it's perfect timing. George Boothby is now pulling into the pits. The reason I'm very excited to see what happens here is because Van der Velde last lap went into the pit lane and did their pit stop. So just as I called, Van der Velde pits first, Boothby automatically does the exact same thing. Now, here's the big question, Jesse, is if you're Van der Velde in this position, do you take new tyres or do you try and get track position here on George Boothby? Because they were just about in that range. I think Van der Velde was about 4.3 seconds off of Boothby, so it's just in that range where not taking the tyres would allow you to gain the position, but it would leave Boothby with a fresh set of tyres very close to your rear.
If you could do it, what you would do is take note of whatever George does, and you would do the opposite. If George takes the minimum 25-second stop and doesn't take tires, you will take an additional 5 seconds to take tires, because then you'll have something to fight him with. If he doesn't take tires, then you absolutely, or excuse me, if he does take tires, you don't, and you gain those 5 seconds back. You want to do the opposite of whatever he's doing, because he's the only driver that's beating you. The only unfortunate part about that is a lot of these drivers, they're not with like a big team here today. They're all racing by themselves, so you'd have to do the quick maths by yourself. One person in chat asking, who's going to do the math? Well, obviously we will at some point when the dust settles. We'll be able to let you know. George Boothby pitting out of the lead and back out into the fray. We'll keep you abreast of what exactly has occurred. The top 10 drivers still yet to pit in this race. Mellis, Lawrence, and Brochures in this time through. Jardier pitting out of the lead of the race, racing for the Jardier Community Team Black Team. Now, in previous weeks, he was just waiting for the Jardier Community Team, but this car is labeled black, though it does appear very, very blue. I worry that Jardier might be colorblind.
Fair enough. I think the Team Black, I mean, I don't know this, but I imagine the Team Black is just an easy way of telling apart the different Jardier community teams. I'm wondering if they're about to enter a couple of more cars for the Jardier community into the championship, or maybe a different one at least there. And just looking, it's not updated. There it is now. Van der Velde 5.3 seconds behind Boothby. So I imagine whatever they did, they both did the same strategy there, and it's not given Van der Velde the advantage that they would have gained. But that being said, Jesse, if Boothby had taken a fresh set of tyres and Van der Velde hadn't, with that 5.3 second gap, Van der Velde would have been behind Boothby anyway, with worse tyres. So honestly, I'm giving this point to Van der Velde here. Just do your thing. They went in first anyway, but to be behind Boothby, 5 seconds behind with a fresh set of tyres, is better than being... Oh no, what's happened to John Daly here? John Daly's facing the wrong way on the track, having to wait as well to recover because there are cars coming through. I wonder what happened there. It looks like may have just been a spin, maybe catching the curb. I didn't see another car around, Jesse, that may have collided with them. But going back to what I was saying with Van der Velde, it is much better to be 5 seconds behind on a fresh set of tyres that are equal to Boothby's than 3/10 behind but on a completely worse set of tyres.
Yeah, for those of you wondering, Van der Velde's pit time was a 1:34. I would imagine almost identical to that was George Boothby. So obviously they did the same exact strategy, whatever that was. I'm going to assume that was taking tires. A few more of the top 10 that have yet to pit are coming in to complete their stop. Very rarely these days do we see anybody going as long as possible, but you might see one or two cars do that today. So the top two on the same strategy as each other, a 1:34 stop, pretty much even between the two of them as they come out. And like you say, there's about a 5 second gap. It wouldn't have mattered regardless. The top two, what we assume to be the top two, when they come through, both having the quickest lap of the race. Now, keep in mind, that's done to the 100th, or done to the 10th, the 100th, and the 1000th, and they have matched times. They did that very early on in the race, within the first 5 laps, in fact, and nobody has beat them. Neither one of them have beat each other, in fact, to this point. Well, halfway into the race, your man out front, Tim Peck, as you would have imagined, could today be the day that somebody finally breaks through and wins their second race of the season and takes control of his championship. Certainly look like it's going Boothby's way.
Boothby has had an excellent race so far, with 35 minutes into the race, and they've just been putting out fast lap after fast lap. That being said though, you can't discount Van der Velde here, simply because as we mentioned earlier, Boothby and Van der Velde sharing that fastest lap points. So there's definitely pace there for Tinko van der Velde. I just personally, I want to see it come out a bit more. That being said, though, was 5.3 seconds away from Boothby last lap, now 4.3 seconds away. So clearly found a bit of time. There is Fisher, and is that McCole coming into contact with each other around that corner? It looks like Fisher has gained the position on McCole there. Looking back though, Boothby in that first place position. I'd be surprised if George lost this race from here without a huge accident happening, because Van der Velde still has to close that gap, and then not just that, they've got to actually overtake Boothby, and that in itself is no easy task.
No, it's certainly not in any way. Keep in mind, Nicholas Bossel, it's actually the leader of the race, still has to do their mandatory stop. Ripper and the 22 justices in, as was Saristo that time through. One car left to do their stop. And look at this mad dash for 18th place. Max Payne has it for the time being and might just be overtaken by Swansea Manara, and in fact is the Ferrari emerging victorious from that battle there, and might lose another spot here, might Max Payne. That's Romain Thomas, the Valkyrie Esports 42, looking down to the inside, has to brake a little bit early, falls back in line, and look at this, back onto the gas and into the corner deep, makes the Ferrari think better of it, and side by side again goes Max Payne, but it's a losing effort, I'm afraid, in the left-hander, and has to go back single file. Oh, but he's gone wide here, look, and the 42 of Thomas, a little bit of contact in 3, as the Valkyrie Esports driver is through for what is effectively 17th at this point. Very close quarter stuff there, and in a matter of a few turns, Max Payne finds himself down a couple of spots.
Max Payne does find himself down a couple of spots, but almost as soon as that fight ended, Jesse, Thomas got a 5-second penalty from the steward. So unfortunately for Thomas, that place that they've just gained is not going to be quite gifted to them yet. If they want to keep that 17th, they're going to need to put some distance on Payne from behind. And oh my god, I've got to say, a freeway fight through turn 1, very exciting to watch. Looking back towards the front, Boothby and Van der Velde, well, I was saying earlier that Tinko was closing that gap. That continues to be the case. Tinko van der Velde just 4 seconds behind Boothby. That's about to update with a new gap, and we'll see if there's any more improvement there. Actually, no, Van der Velde's slightly falling behind now, but only by about a 10th. So they're catching. Van der Velde is slowly gaining on Boothby here. My question to you, Jesse, is do you see this catch-up happening? Do you think Tinko can keep this pace up and slowly crawl their way back towards Boothby?
I would like to say yes, because I would like to have a very interesting finish here. I don't know. I think Boothby might be sort of cooling it just a little bit. I have no other reason why he's losing a little bit of time here. Maybe Tinko, to his credit, has found a little something extra, but I don't know. Maybe Boothby's just pacing himself more than a second gain in the last couple of laps. Keep in mind, it was 5.3 at one point. It's 1 point, go ahead and call it 1.2 the gap now. We'll see if it continues to go down. Maybe Boothby had a Larry lap, and that might just be the case as the gap pretty much remains stagnant through that sector. We'll keep that in mind. Pretty much everybody doing the same strategy. We expect tires went around for everyone there for the most part. There might have been a couple of cars that elected to not do that. Keeping up with chat, one of our eagle-eyed viewers spotted Christian Bach's GTR earlier in the race, always a fan favorite, of course. And Jordan Daly explains his incident earlier as Simonara is going to be overtaken by the BMW. Thomas coming through, even with that 5-second penalty, not slowing down at all. This car absolutely taking it to him, but he's going to have a tall task here around the outside, but he's just about got it, and that might be the ticket up to 16th place, and it is. Thomas into P16, Simonara down a spot right there. But as I was saying, Daly explaining what happened, he did get contacted into the driver door. Apparently the 97, the culprit of that, Saristo and Daly having contact, according to Daly himself.
Oh, no!
Oh, it's a big crash. Simonara's gone around, and so has Thomas. As they both slide around, they're trying to get out of the way. And that was a scary moment for Thomas, who was sliding across the racetrack, but was doing that purposefully to be able to get the car out of the way and head in the right direction. What on earth happened here? The Ferrari hops the curb, takes out the 42, and the Lamborghini is able to get through. Max Payne is able to get through, and I know some people may look not so fondly on what the BMW did right there of Thomas, but I'm going to tell you something. That was heads-up driving to get out of the way, knew that they were a sitting duck there on the outer apex of turn 13.
Yeah, I think it's one of those difficult situations where you're stuck on the wrong side of the track. You're basically, like you said, you're sitting duck. You're very likely to get hit by another car, but at the same time, swinging across the track at that speed when there's other cars coming, very, very risky unless you can catch it. Now, luckily, they did manage to catch that car. Thomas did a very good job at just sliding back around and catching it there, but could have gone very badly wrong, Jesse, and could have actually ended someone's race. So I see both sides of that argument. Great work from Thomas to recover and get himself out of definite danger, but at the same time almost causing unnecessary danger in the process. I'm actually just thinking back on that incident anyway, what happened. Simonara there seemed to be trying to stay ahead of Payne. You could see that Payne broke quite early for the corner, but Simonara clearly trying to push it, thought they were going to have to go the long way around the outside, broke a lot later, then realised that they couldn't go forward because Thomas was there and instead went towards the curb. And I've got to say, I'm not sure, but I think Simonara there is going to be looked at quite closely and judged as to what the appropriate penalty is there, because it was a tough situation to be in, but you can't just try and cut the corner like that. That being said, though, where does Simonara go in that situation? I think at the end of the day, you just got to cut your losses and go straight on, because they were never making that corner.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, partner. That's exactly what I saw. Simonara, ill-fated move down into turn 13, hopped the curb, and quite surprising we don't see more of that, really. That is a monstrous curb. A monster truck would very much love to hit that for some style points. That is a big curb into 13, and when you're flying through the air, it's really hard to brake because you're not a jet fighter. And that's exactly what happened there. Frustrated Thomas for sure. A very happy Max Payne, though. Lost both those spots, got him back, didn't actually have to compete for them. 2 for 1, that's a BOGO, and you take those. Drive-through penalty for car 97 for taking out car 197. That was the incident we saw the aftermath of with Jordan Daly earlier on. So Daly was absolutely spot on, a takedown, as he put it. No further action for an incident involving the 78 and the 540, the only additional incidents that we have had thus far.
16 minutes left to go in this race, Jesse. We're currently watching Alessio Mellis try and push themselves further into that top 10. Currently sitting in that 10th place spot, just 4 tenths behind McCall in the Mercedes here. Will they be able to push themselves up a bit further? Mellis has been an interesting one actually in this race, Jesse, because started close to that top 10, not quite in it, fell quite back a bit towards the middle. I saw them in 14th at one point, almost fighting for 15th place, but has managed to climb their way back up into that top 10, of course. Some misfortune from other people in that top 10 has helped them, but Mellis making a comeback here. Definitely a driver to keep your eye on, because they may be able just get a couple more points to help them out in this championship in the next 15 minutes.
Jardier! Oh my goodness! Oh, Jardier's still there! He did not back out. Jardier trying to go the long way. I thought he was going to eventually have to back out. He does finally, but my goodness, he held barrels there for several corners through turns 3 and 4, and I thought for a second there it was going to be ugly. I thought Jardier was going to go for one, but excellent balance, excellent presence, and excellent sportsmanlike conduct from both of these drivers. Jardier still trying to get by the Frenchman, and he might have him around the outside. It's going to be the last of the late breakers into the left-hander. Can he get there? Yes, he can. Can he hold it? No, he can't. Jardier off into the grass, has to back out for the S's, and that was very, very close. Unknown if Hugo knew just how close Jardier was to him, and they'll have to sort that out again. By the way, up front, Tinko has lost all the time that they had gained. Boothby driving back away has gained a second over the last couple of laps. Hugo Merrils and Jaroslav Hansik continuing to do excellent battle. They've been doing this since basically the drop of the green flag. It's hard to tell with drivers these days because some like being in a battle, some hate it. I am going to hazard a guess that both Hugo and Jardier are loving this.
Oh, 100%. I know Jardier for a fact will be loving it. Melis there going wide out of that corner, picking up a little grass. That means they won't be able to get in the position they were looking for. McCall as Jardier goes for yet another move around the outside of Hugo. This time being successful onto the inside before turn 2 and able to pull ahead before they go round turn 3 there. Hugo drops down to 5th, and Jardier gets up into 4th finally after probably...
Look how far back he was.
I mean, that is the furthest back Jardier has been, though, in about a lap and a half. Because Jardier was on Hugo this entire lap, and then round the outside here, swings out the last second, and look how close together those cars are, almost in sync as they go around the corner there. And Jardier just takes the advantage, pushes the acceleration round the corner, and ends up just ahead of Hugo. But I can tell you now, Jesse, back to what you were saying earlier, both Jardier and Hugo are going to be smiling from cheek to cheek with that battle.
Well, in boxing, they call that the rope-a-dope, and that's when you catch them watching one hand while you're hitting them with the other. And that's exactly what happened right there. Was Hugo went to the middle of the track to defend, and Jardier was like, "Oh, I'm going down to your inside, mate." "No, I'm not. I'm going around the outside," knowing that that can get done, as these two are getting incredibly close for my liking. Lindrup there very nearly getting cut off. And Billin, oh no, something's gone wrong. The wee shite 183 has gone through the grass. That looked very strange indeed.
That almost looked like a tire burst. You can see that. Just look at what happens here. This is from Billin's point of view, and just randomly the car swings to the. What? I was expecting a wheel to jump there maybe, because the tire's clearly not gone. I mean, they're picking up speed now. So it's not fully gone, although have they actually got back up to max speed? I'm not sure, but either way, that to me looked like a tyre burst, except it didn't. Do you get what I mean, Jesse?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, tires technically can go down in ACC, and they can have issues, but I highly doubt that's what happened. The only thing I could think of is he had all of his momentum going right, and the car broke loose, and he was counter steering. It happened so quick. It looked very strange. Folks, I got to go back to the Jardier-Hugo Merrils battle because that was one of the best fights you're ever going to see in sim racing. Kids, if you want to know what it takes to be top drawer esports sim racer, that's what it takes. That was a 45-plus minute battle from the drop of the green flag to now. That took Jardier that entire time. That was patience. That was a lot of respect out of those two drivers. Hugo drove defensively, but smartly, and they raced as close as you possibly can. Might there have been some contact throughout the race? Yes, but cars have fenders for a reason. Rubbin's racing, as long as you don't wreck each other or take each other out, I think is completely fine. And besides that, that move was excellent. I have so much respect for Hugo Merrils and, of course, Jardier as well. They know how to put on a show, and they certainly have. And effectively, what that battle was for is for 4th place, obviously. But what that battle was actually for was the right to go and challenge Samir Foch for P3. Jardier just about a second away from doing that. Simonara trying to pick up some of the pieces from the earlier mistake, able to get around Nicholas Bosselet in the 137 there. As something definitely going on with the Weeshite car at this stage. Alessio Mellis was getting past a little bit ago, but now he's going to find himself being the one doing the passing up into P9 for the number 15 car. Martin Lawrence able to get by one of the nearest competitors. Is that Morgan McCall they just got by? I think it might have been.
That's a shame for McCall as well, because they have been in that 9th place basically since the beginning of the race. So you're just losing out to both Mellis and Lawrence at the same time there. So McCall is going to struggle to cope with that one. There's 10 minutes left, Jesse. They've got time to try and claw that back. And I don't doubt for a second that 540 Mercedes will be trying to pick that back up again. Here is Ruta Billen, seeing how they are progressing. You can see now they're under pressure Oh no, they're not. They've just overtaken Bosslet. Okay, so never mind. The Honda that looked like it was struggling, Jesse, back on track now, but managing to get that position back for Bosslet is going to be more of a consolation at this point after what happened on that corner. And looking to chat, Jordan Daly, who was originally in this race, had to retire the car, said that it looked like the wheel just snapped. They put too much power on coming through the corner. And I've got to agree, that is more or less what it looks like. If it wasn't a tyre fault, it was most likely that a bit too hard on the acceleration, wheels snapped, and it just threw the car onto the grass, which of course then took it further.
A lot of debate going on in chat on what top drawer means. Well, I think everybody in chat knows what it means, but they're quite confused where that comes from. I have no idea. I guess it's the same thing with adult beverages, right? You say top shelf. Obviously is where the good stuff is. Maybe all the good stuff is in the top drawers. Perhaps, I'm not entirely sure, but remember when I said Jardier won the battle to win the right to compete for P3? Well, that is going to happen before the end of this race, and if these two get to racing, remember, Hugo hasn't fallen too far off the back of this group as well. Hugo not out of this for a potential podium spot at this stage. Simonara, by the way, was given a drive-through penalty for his involvement in the earlier incidents with some of the other cars. I think that was Thomas. Indeed, the 42 BMW. Drive-through penalty issued to the 12 for that accident. Of course, I think we all saw that coming, but now it is Samir Fosh's turn. And oh, by the way, George Boothby has taken the quickest lap in sole custody. He has broken the tie that has withstood most of this race between him and Tinko Vandervelde to have sole control of the fastest lap of the race. Samir Fosh, though, trying to hold on to P3 late in this race. Heard earlier that he thought this race was at Zandvoort today. Did no practice here at the Indianapolis GP circuit. Was surprised when he loaded into the server and saw Indianapolis, but has done a really great job regardless. Qualified inside the top 5. He's ran inside the top 3 for the most of the race, but now finds Jardier right behind him for that spot. 7 minutes. Can Samir Fosh hold on for 7 minutes here to keep a podium spot? Tim Peck.
Usually I would say yes. Fosh is one of those drivers that is just so good at both being the aggressor and the defender, but Jardier has just looked on fire for the last 15 minutes, and even there at the beginning of this lap, Jardier was all over the rear of Fosh, trying to find a way through. Coming through that first corner very tight together, there's only about a tenth between them back then. You can see now Jardier getting ever so close to the rear of the number 88 coming through these corners, and this, Jesse, this is where it counts. Great exit here from Jardier, could be enough to use the slipstream to pull them along for that turn 1. That being said, it looks like Jardier way too far back to make anything happen for now, but of course it's a long straight before we even get to turn 1 here, and Jardier has already closed that gap. Are they going to try and do the same thing, go around the outside like they did to Hugo earlier? It looks like they're looking for it around the outside of turn 1. Fosh shuts that door as quickly as it opens. Jardier will have to pull back and look for another option for now.
That was a good look from Jardier right there. What was he able to learn? Well, he's learned something he probably already knew, that Samir is going to be a hard out to get, and it's unlikely to give him any extra room. And, well, Jardier has to go out to school. Well, he knows how he got by Hugo, but now he's got to do it all over again. Can he do it in the limited amount of chances he has? A couple of things I want to mention. There was a 5-second penalty for car 14 for forcing another driver off track. There was a 5-second penalty for car 12 for avoidable contact while gaining positions. An additional 5-second penalty for car 22 for avoidable contact with car 9. There was, of course, the penalty we talked about earlier, the 15-second penalty for car 22 for taking out car 42. There was a drive-through penalty for car 12. They got a stop-and-go 30 for speeding in the pit lane, rather unfortunately. A warning for the 12 for dive bombing, and a warning for the 42 for an unsafe rejoin, spinning on the racing line while rejoining. And that catches you up to date as we watch the final few laps of the race. Jardier trying to take P3 away from Samir Fosh.
Already lining up the outside move again, swung to the outside before the first corner. Is it going to be enough this time? Neck and neck as they go round it. Jardier swinging round, trying to stay on the inside, and will be on the inside for turn 2 here as Foch tries to hold on. Foch manages to do so though. Still has the advantage by turn 3 and 4, and that would be enough to keep him ahead. Although Jardier here looks to be doing the switchback maneuver, almost towards the inside for a second there, but didn't quite have the momentum to get alongside. But Jesse Lee, I think for the next few laps we're just going to see this on repeat, but here comes Hugo. Do not forget that Rails is in this battle as well, still lingering too, and Foch now needs to worry about not letting Jardier through, because it may not be one car that comes, it may be 2.
Uh-oh, this is going to get very interesting. I thought that was an excellent veteran move by Samir Foch down into 1. He got beat, but knew that if he stayed along far enough aside, when he gets to turn 3 and 4, it's going to be all Samir Foch, and it was, and he needed it too, because Jardier was dead alongside. Well, what did that do? That one little battle for 3 or 4 turns brought Hugo Merrils back into the fold. That might actually be Samir's best friend, because now Jardier has to try and keep from being passed by Hugo Merrils, because if Jardier tries to make a move here and it doesn't come off, Hugo's not going to let off the gas here to let Jardier back in through. Keep in mind, all of these drivers pictured are fighting for championship position near the end of the season. You never know how important these positions might be. Automatically out of 15 and all the way down to the pit wall, Samir Foch doesn't want to get beat down to the inside. Hugo tucks out of line, goes wide. Now Jardier back side by side down into turn 1, not quite far enough alongside, trying to do the undercut. Sold him a dummy, did he? He might be in there. No, he's not. Sideways, a little bit loose by Jardier there. Samir Foch lives for another lap. Hugo closing in as well. What a battle for P3.
Jardier really trying to find the position now, even switching up their strategy a little bit there, realizing that the outside just isn't going to work on Foch. Foch has clearly done their homework, knows how to defend from the inside, but Hugo lurking around the outside very early. Jardier pulled out very last minute there, Jesse, because of course they were trying to dummy Foch into looking towards that inside, and Hugo and Jardier both going towards that outside, and then Jardier actually braking early meant that they almost collided. Salverleinen here looking for a move around Valentin Barrier. Can they go for the outside? It's not quite going to be enough, and Barrier is going to hold on to that 6th place for now in the Audi. Has done a brilliant job in this race so far, but back to the fight for P3. Who is going to come out on top as we come towards the final set of corners? Just remember that if Jardier wants to get this move done, they are going to need to get such a good exit out turn 15 so that they can be alongside Foch by the time we get to turn 1.
Oh man, I was trying to figure out where Boothby crossed the line. We might get one extra lap here. He might get back, Boothby will, to the line before it strikes 0. So we might have a Cinderella needs to go to the ball situation here. When the clock strikes midnight, it might be not over just yet. Hugo in 5th place, can see 3rd place, looking to make that move when an opportunity presents itself. Savalainen doing the exact same over Barrier for P6. A bunch of fights here in the top 10 to end this race. Boothby comfortably out in the lead by 6.5 seconds over Tinko Vanderveld. It'll be a day that grows Boothby's championship lead. In a season where he's already used his mulligan and he has to do as best he can every race, he's about to become the first repeat winner of the season. Jardier looking menacingly down to the inside of the left-hander, down the back straight, but no malice there. Wasn't nearly close enough. Samir Foch knew it. And here comes the leader, George Boothby, and I'm pretty confident in saying we are about to get a free lap here as we're going to cross the line with a lot of time to spare. That means that battle for 3rd place has a completely new lap left to deal with. Boothby takes the white flag. Everybody else coming to get it, including these drivers. Jardier very close in 13 that time. Could this be the setup down into turn 1 that he's been looking for? What will Samir Foch do? I'm assuming he's going to the wall, and he is. No, he goes to the middle. He's going to block any lane Jardier comes from. Down to the wall now. Jardier going around the outside, getting most of the way to the side on the brakes hard. Really wide arc by by Jardier, looking to get a really tight line in. He's going to get it. Maybe a little bit of a tap there. Is he far enough along? Yes. Fender to fender going through turn 2. Turn 3, clear again. Samir Foch holds. Here comes Hugo. What can Hugo do here? As look, a down run down to the inside. Oh, a little bit of a mistake by Samir Foch there.
Jardier keeping up the attack as they go through the lap. You can see still looking for maybe an inside position around this tricky navigation of corners here. And Hugo still lurking, waiting for Jardier's mistakes that they can take back 4th place there. But Jardier not letting off even in this final lap. Of course, why would they? They have been doing such a good job at lining up these attacks. They just need one to work. But Jesse, that is the final time they'll get to go through turn 1. So Jardier now needs to make something happen in this final set of corners. And we've talked about the corner coming up on how it's not really a place to overtake, but people have tried it. Is Jardier going to be the first to make this happen?
He might be, but before that, George Boothby becomes the first repeat winner of the season. He's going to win it here at Indianapolis. What a brilliant win by George Boothby. Took the pole position, took the fastest lap, and has now taken the checkered flag. Jardier, last gasp here. Samir Foch coming to the line. Really won't need to defend here. I think it's going to be left a little too late. Samir Foch somehow holds and takes P3. Tinko Vandervelde in P2. What an offense by Samir Foch. What an attack by Jardier. What a drive by all our drivers today. Just brilliant, brilliant stuff. What an excellent race. And he doesn't care that he finished 4th. He doesn't care it wasn't a podium. He loved that. That is a man who loves his racing. He loves tight battles. He's raced Samir a bunch in the past, obviously. And that was a great fight between him and Hugo. Brilliant stuff. Outside the top 5, Valentin Berrier does hang on to the 6th place position. Savalainen comes through in 7th. Garrett Fisher 8th. Alessio Mellis in 9th place. And you saw Martin Lawrence come across for the final spot in the top 10. You know what time it is, folks at home. Driver of the day votes from you in chat. We'd love to hear who you think the driver of the day is. I have an idea of who you might pick.
I mean, going back to Jardier doing donuts on the finish line, that is a man who loves racing. It doesn't matter where they finish, 4th, 3rd, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this was pure racing for them from start to finish. I don't think there was a single point in time there, Jesse, when Jardier wasn't stuck in the action, looking for a move, defending against someone else. That is why I love to watch sim racing. I'm sure it's why every single one of these drivers loves to be involved in sim racing as well. That was an absolutely phenomenal race, and big hand out to Boothby for leading it from start to finish too. That'll be the 2nd win this championship for Boothby. The first, of course, like you mentioned, to have 2 wins in this championship, and that will really help them in this championship fight, especially because their closest rival, Hugo Morels, only managed to bring home 5th and wasn't able to capitalize off Jardier in the final few moments there. But overall, Jesse, that top 5, that is one brilliant top 5, and personally, I'm so happy with how that race turned out.
Well, rather unfortunate for Matthew Schroeder in the 777. The Valkyrie Esports car has ran out of fuel, I'm being told, and they are in the final turn 15, coming back onto the banking. And unfortunately, nobody's out on the track to push them to the line. You're not technically supposed to do that, but I'm sure nobody would have minded that occurring. But that's where they have come to rest. 21st place, 20th, somewhere around in there. They will unfortunately not finish today's race. Let's talk to today's race winner, Tim. George Boothby, what a day. You took pole. You were absolutely dead tied on the fastest lap for the majority of the day. You had about 5 seconds to live with. Excellent pit strategy, or maybe lack of pit strategy as well. Were able to retake the lead. Completely unaware, I assume, of everything that happened behind you. Just a really solid day from you.
Yeah, I absolutely love this track. So, and I've done like a few hot lap competitions and stuff here. So I was confident of my pace. I just didn't know how that would translate in the race. So I was really, I wanted to get pole, and I'm happy I did. I managed to get a good lap in. Like I say, in the race, I just wasn't as confident, and I know Tinko is so fast, so I was expecting him to really be on me, right? But he made a mistake at turn one, and because of that, it meant that Foch could get through, and I managed to get a bit of a gap. So the gap barely changed throughout the race. Like I think I managed out of that whole hour, I gained an extra 2 seconds, maybe if that. So like, if he'd have been right on me, it could have been one of the most sweaty, moist races I've ever been a part of. But thankfully, because I got that gap, it just meant I could sort of manage it a bit, which is like, as a driver, it's what you want to do. Maybe not for viewers. Obviously, you want to see the battles, and obviously the battles are always fun. But yeah, it just meant I could just not go full 100%, and yeah, just managed it to the end. So I'm really happy. I think I got fast slap as well. So maximum points. Let's go.
What a brilliant race. And of course, with taking your drop round for the very first race, you weren't here. You basically need to be immaculate throughout the championship. Well, 2 wins and a second place really doesn't get much better than that. Tell me about your pit strategy, though. Were you ever considering not taking tires? Were you going to take tires the entire way? Were you trying to offset Tinko at all? What was the pit strategy like today for you?
Yeah, I just wanted to basically get about halfway because at this track it's quite brutal on the tires. The left side of your tires really burn up. So I wanted to just if I had got the gap, I can sort of just pit exactly halfway, and then I know both stints I've like had the same wear, and I should be the exact same pace. Because sometimes if you like do an undercut or do an overcut, it's like messes up your stints a bit. Your car might handle a bit differently. Um, so thankfully, because I had that gap, I didn't need to worry about that. If it would have been closer, I definitely would have gone for an undercut because I mean, Tinko pitted 1 lap before me, and I think he gained a second just because fresh tires, and obviously they warm up quicker. You can really you just zoom. So yeah, if it had been a bit closer, the undercut would have been a brilliant strategy. But we just didn't need to. So I just went all about tire wear. What can be the best for both stints? So hit bang in the middle, and yeah, I finished across the line with about 2 liters left. So uh, just
Oof.
stuck with the perfect strat, and it worked. So no deviation, thankfully.
I got one more question. I'm going to turn you over to your biggest fan, but Ferrari, you seem to be a master of a lot of different cars. We've seen you in a bunch of different cars. Your stream title for me pretty much says it all. Are you a Ferrari main now? What are your feelings on the Ferrari 488 Evo?
I've so when I first got into this game I think about 2 years ago. I think like my first RCI season, even I signed up in the Ferrari, and then my second season as well. It wasn't the Evo; it was the older Ferrari. My second season as well. I just missed out on the championship. I think it was Jardy that picked me to it actually. Um, so I used to love the Ferrari. It was my main car all the time. Um, but then I transitioned to the McLaren, and that stole my heart for a long time. But I don't know. Recently, the McLaren's just getting a bit boring, and I've driven the Porsche a lot lately as well. And again, I'm getting the same thing. I just, it's nice to main one car, but after a while, you want to just try something else, I guess. So I've gone back to the Ferrari in a way, and thankfully, Sir Foch, like who's in this race, he's big on the Ferrari. He has loads of setups, he has loads of knowledge, and we're good friends. So we can like on stream and off stream talk a bit about setups and in his Discord server, a bit of an advertisement, I guess, for his Discord. But he has a lot of people in there helping with setups for all cars, but especially the Ferrari. So. Uh, I didn't have that sort of gateway of not having any setups and it being completely a learning experience in that way. A lot of the groundwork was already done because of that, because the setups are out there and available. So it meant I could just hop in and just learn the car, and it didn't take too long because I had that previous knowledge of it, and I've been loving it. It's an absolute weapon, and it's not fun over the curbs, but apart from that, it's a lot of fun. So I think it is going to be my main car for a while. How long I don't know, but yeah, I think the next few seasons I'll definitely be sticking with it.
Well, I think Samir says it best himself with his team name for his car. He's a Ferrari enjoyer. I think you are too. By the way, George, just so you know, you're a weapon in anything you drive. I'm going to turn you over to Tim Peck. Tim Peck, do you got anything for our winner today?
I just have one question, George, and that is basically based on the start of the race. Obviously, you mentioned that you knew Tinko had a lot of pace here, and there's no doubt about it that starting on the outside is almost better on this track, even though you have that first
Yeah.
place advantage. That first corner is lethal if you start on the outside. So did you? How are you feeling going into the race? Just when you were sitting on the line preparing, did you have a strategy in mind? What would have happened basically if Tingo hadn't have messed up on that first corner? Maybe even put pressure on you and even got ahead.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, if he'd have got ahead, then like I said, I think it would have been or even if he didn't, if he'd have just stayed behind me, I think it would have been an absolute crazy battle. Um, but my goal was like just break later than him, I guess. So I was like, going further and further past the braking boards. I was like, this can't happen. Like, so I put on the brakes and I did actually perfectly make the corner, but there was no like easing off the brakes or modulating or anything like that. It was slam on the anchors and I barely made the corner. And he braked another like 10 meters after me, so I just saw him go sliding off the track and it felt good because obviously it got so far she got through and then it gave me a gap. So but yeah, my goal was just break later than him, but he just absolutely went crazy and braked even later again. So uh, it worked out, I guess. Like sometimes like when you get going with the attitude of I will just break later. Like if I'd have break later than Tinko this time, I would have been taking the oval. Like so it's I don't know. It's tough. You got to just judge it as you see it, and break later. But if you just use your judgment as well, I guess.
Brilliant, thank you very much, and well done on an absolutely superb victory. You were just so dominant out there today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Cheers, guys.
George, you want to shout anybody out before you leave today?
Oh yeah. Well, Heat and Valache, of course. So Fosh for the amazing setups. Stream, all the viewers, like all the people from my stream as well. You should definitely check out the RCI channel, for all the commentary. And yeah, just thanks guys for putting on such a good show again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely brilliant job. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner, second time this season and in control of the championship going into the decider in 1 week's time in South Africa. George Boothby, congratulations.
Thank you guys. Cheers.
Well, he's a man. He loves his racing, and he is a stranger to almost no car. I'm pretty sure he could get into that old Jaguar and win in that as well. He's just that kind of guy, Tim.
Now that you've said that, I would honestly love to see it. I think it's one of those cars that is a little bit underloved by just everyone because its performance isn't great. But I would love to see George get in that car and just see how well he can do in it, because he has been a phenomenal driver across this series and across every single series I've seen him racing. Just been absolutely brilliant. Understands the car completely, understands racing strategy as well. As you heard in the interview, had something in mind for the whole race, knew where they were going to pit, how they were going to approach the first corner, and even had a slight plan as to what would happen if they lost that lead as well. So an absolutely phenomenal racer, and there's no wonder that he is the one leading this championship.
No, absolutely not. Today was the day I thought somebody could take control of it, and that's exactly what happened here. George wins his second race, and he has the control. But folks, don't get ahead of yourselves because there is one race left. It is Kyalami in South Africa, of course. It's a track that has been known to ruin people's championships, and he still has to perform reasonably well to win this championship because a lot of his competitors, like Jardier, like Tinko Vandervelde, and Hugo Merrells, did also perform very well today. Who's going to win the championship? Well, we won't know till next week. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for all the racing action, and of course, to be notified when we go live. The Monday Deutschland Masters Championship continues on Monday. And of course, we'll be back with you on Friday for the finale of the GT Sprint Challenge Season 7, live from South Africa. A big thank you to everyone here that does so much that make these broadcasts happen. Our broadcast team, Ryan Mawson behind the cameras today, our lovely stewarding team that had a workout today, the admins, and of course, you all at home that make it so interesting for us to interact with, chat We absolutely love talking to you as well. Thank you all for being a part as we're getting closer to 4,200 subscribers here on YouTube. And that's another milestone for us. So we do appreciate everything you do as well. Of course, a big thank you to our partners that make this race and every race possible as well. And that includes Fanatec. Feel free to use our affiliate link when making purchases of quality sim racing hardware at fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps us with things like server cost. When you use it, it tells them we sent you. Driver 61. Big thank you to Driver 61. And did you know you can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code? Of course, driver coaching can make you a better racing driver. It's worked for several members of the admin team here. They have the lap times and the trophies to prove it, of course. And of course, a big thank you to AK Informatica. They provide our server solutions for us, and we couldn't put on a better show without them. Well, with all the thank yous in out of the way, Tim Peck, final thoughts on the day.
I mean, what can you say about that race? Absolutely phenomenal. So many battles happening across the track. Of course, Jesse, we got to see a couple of accidents as well. That's not a good thing as such, but I was just referring to you saying that this was possibly the calmest track that we've visited, not having a lot of accidents here, and I think we may have broken that today. But either way, a phenomenal race all round, some absolutely beautiful racing. I'm sure everyone that took part is going to be happy with how that turned out to some extent, because I can't get over Jardier's move around the outside of Hugo Morales on that turn one in the middle of the race. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was perfectly calculated, and you don't see a lot of that every single day. It's one of those rare moments that you see it once and it just makes you fall in love with racing on the spot. And I think anyone that was watching that moment, any of the viewers that saw that, is going to probably be thinking, okay, time to get the wheel out again. I need to do some racing, because that was phenomenal to watch.
And that's exactly what you expect out of the top split of a series like this. And that's what you got. By the way, non-committal on who was the driver of the day. So we're going to have to equally give it to George Boothby, Jardier, and Foch. I think we can all agree they all put on a show and deserved it quite handily indeed. Once again, a big thank you to everybody being with us today. We'll be back with you in 1 week for the finale. Don't miss Deutschland Masters on Monday. You should have Ryan Mawson and his fantastic co-broadcaster, Oriosh, there with you, Mr. John Dalton, and Stewie behind the cameras for that. On behalf of everybody here at RCI, we thank you. I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Ryan Mawson. We'll see you in 1 week's time for the finale. And until then, have a good night.